Going undefeated in college football is quite a challenge, and there aren't many teams that are going to be able to do that. But for today's exercise, we're going to take a look at a few teams that could potentially go undefeated. Now, again, this is going to be challenging. It will be tough for teams to win every single game. Right now, FanDuel has the top odds to go undefeated. Notre Dame is actually at the top. I was kind of surprised by that. I thought that the Irish would have a little bit of a tougher schedule, but when you do truly look at the schedule, that is definitely a possibility. Obviously, it kind of depends on CJ Carr, but it still is a team that has a lot of excitement. Ohio State is next. They are also going through a transition at quarterback. They are at plus 400 to go undefeated. That's going to be tough in the Big Ten. So that was also kind of a surprise. The fact that they were both ahead of Clemson. Now, I know that Clemson plays LSU right off the bat. That was still kind of surprising. I think that if they get through LSU, the odds that they go undefeated will probably go much higher than they are right now. They sit at plus 410. Liberty is one of the teams that should go undefeated. They do have a tough test early in the year, so that could potentially trip them up. But if they're truly back to where Jamie Chadwell wants them to be, they should be able to go undefeated. They are at plus 440. Penn State is up next, and the Nittany Lions have a ton of talent returning, and that's really exciting if you are a Penn State fan. They currently sit at plus 460, so that is a team to keep an eye on when it comes to going undefeated. And the final team that we'll talk about is Oregon at plus 500. Again, their schedule does have some tough tests, but with the talent they have coming back, these are the top three teams in the Big Ten, and Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State. So you can see why they're picked to go potentially undefeated, but it's not going to be easy. We'll start with the AAC, and we're going to start with the Navy. Now, Memphis has better odds than the Navy midshipmen, but Memphis also is going through a ton of transition. Now, the big game for Navy, obviously, well, the Army-Navy game is a big one, but the road trip to Notre Dame pretty much dictates if this happens or not. I will say that up until this point, Navy has a really good chance of being undefeated going into that Notre Dame game. And while it's unlikely that they win, it's still the best chance that any team in this conference could go undefeated. Tulane is going to be a competitor, but their non-conference schedule is brutal. USF is a really good team, but they start with Boise State, Florida, and Miami. So that is not going to be beneficial for them. Memphis has an easier schedule. They do get Arkansas at home, but they're going through a lot of transition. So if I have to pick a team that is most likely to go undefeated, even though it's not likely at all, it's going to be Navy. We talked about Clemson before, and obviously the LSU game is a massive one. That is going to really determine if they can go undefeated or not. If they lose that game, obviously those hopes are over. But this is a team that has a ton of returning talent. They're in a great place. I would say that's a lot of people would argue they're maybe in a better place than LSU is right now in terms of consistency, returning talent. That game will have a huge impact on this team. When you look at the remaining schedule, there aren't really many games that you have a ton of worries. Obviously, you have to play SMU. You do have to go to Georgia Tech 2 weeks after you play LSU, so that could be a potential trip up. Louisville on the road late in November could be problematic as well. And then you do have to go to South Carolina. But if this team is undefeated going to South Carolina, kind of depends on what the Gamecocks look like. But this is a team that definitely has the ability to go undefeated this year. Now, here's what I'll say about this is that there are teams on this list that probably aren't going undefeated. So this isn't a video that's basically saying, yes, all of these teams are going undefeated. The Big 12, if you're betting a team to go undefeated, you are taking a huge risk. The Big 12 is not going to have an undefeated team. It would be a big surprise. I do think Arizona State is the best equipped to do that purely from a schedule standpoint, but also from a personnel standpoint. They return nearly every single starter from last year's team, the team that made it to the college football playoff. And if they can get back to that level, the schedule should give them plenty of opportunities to win football games. The tough games, you do have some tough road tests at Baylor, at Utah, at Iowa State. But overall, you feel pretty good about what you have on the schedule. TCU, Texas Tech, both come to Arizona State. So you should be able to have some potential wins on the schedule. You have plenty of talent to make that happen. So while it's not likely that that does happen, the schedule and the personnel returning give them a good chance. And I think part of this exercise is just the idea of what if they do go undefeated? What does that mean? I mean, Oregon won undefeated last year, and then we saw what happened in the college football playoff. If Penn State goes undefeated this year, I think that's going to say a lot about what they do in their big games. They face Oregon at home early in the season. Later, to start the month of November, they do go to Ohio State. They also face Indiana right after that. So they will play former playoff teams from last year, and that will give us a good idea if this Penn State team truly is ready. If they find ways to beat both Oregon and Ohio State, I don't have any concerns about their abilities to win the rest of those games. The staff is in a good place. The personnel they have is going to be really fun once again. They have everything they need to do that. They currently sit at plus 460 to go undefeated, and there's a good chance that they could do that. They have the veterans, they have the personnel. There's a good chance that that could happen. But again, winning in the Big Ten is going to be tough. If Liberty, and this is a big if Liberty gets back to where they want to be after a disappointing season, then going undefeated is a distinct possibility. When you look at the schedule, the James Madison game is the toughest one by a long shot. That is going to be tough, but that game is at home. So if they're able to win that game, I don't have a ton of concerns about the rest of the schedule. They don't have to face Western Kentucky, and they face some of the worst teams in college football. They do face both newcomers in Delaware and Missouri State. They also get New Mexico State, UTEP, FIU, Louisiana Tech, and Kennesaw State. I know that they went 8-4, but this has the makings to be a potential special season for the Flames. Now, the MAC is kind of like the Big 12, where if you're betting on someone to go undefeated, you're probably insane. And Toledo's got the best odds right now at plus 1,500. I just don't think that anybody's going to go undefeated. Now, Toledo did beat Mississippi State last year, so maybe there's a chance that they win on the road against Kentucky. It's not going to be a good one. I would not bet on it. I would not place any money on it, because that's just probably not going to happen. But right now, Toledo does have the best odds to go undefeated. After that Kentucky game, though, there are plenty of favorable matchups. They also do have to go to Washington State. So again, this is probably one that I would stay away from, but technically there is the opportunity for them to stun everybody once again. It's going to be tough. The Toledo team has a lot of work to do. They have a lot to fix on their team, but right now, I think a lot of people are confident in what they could do. Now, the Mountain West has a couple of different teams that you could potentially see go undefeated, but the one I wanted to discuss is Hawaii. They do not have the best odds. They do not have the best reputation coming into the year in terms of winning football games. But let's discuss this. This is kind of a dark horse team that has a lot of momentum going into the year. Timmy Chang has a lot of excitement surrounding this program. He's built them into what he wants it to be, and they're just looking to turn that into wins. They went 5-7 last year, and while their schedule is tough right off the bat, it's going to be fun to watch this team play. Now, Stanford is going to be one of the worst teams in college football, specifically the Power Four. That game is at home. They have an opportunity to beat Stanford right off the bat. You saw what happened last year against UCLA. Now, they did come up short, but that was a team that played that team really tough. Hawaii has the ability to hang tight with some of these teams, and if they can get off to a good start by beating Stanford, then I also like what they could do at Arizona. Arizona is going through a tough time right now, and the offense has a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of negativity surrounding Brent Brennan's squad. And if they're able to start the year 2-0, that's a ton of momentum that they could take into the season. Sam Houston and Portland State are games that they should win. Fresno State is going through a transition on their coaching staff. So you feel like Hawaii early in the season has a little bit more stability. You then go to Air Force that struggled last year. That one will be a challenge. But again, if you have the ability to beat Stanford and Arizona, you should feel confident about your ability to beat Fresno State and Air Force. After that, Utah State going through a coaching change. Colorado State saw their roster pretty much depleted. That's going to be a tough team regardless, but that is a game. Again, if you're playing with the confidence and the momentum that this team could have, especially with the returning talent, that is a game they could win. The San Jose State game is going to be tough, plain and simple. That one will be a challenge for sure. But again, it's all about the momentum. You don't have to play Boise State either. You do get UNLV 2 weeks after you play San Diego State, and you end the year at at home against Wyoming. Again, this is a very unlikely chance, but how fun would it be to see Hawaii bounce back in a massive way? The Mountain West is as wide open as it's probably ever been, even with Boise State's dominance. I think there are plenty of teams that could get to the top. And just for pure entertainment purposes, Hawaii could be a team that surprises people this year. Now, Texas does not have an easy schedule by any means. And it's really interesting to look at some of these odds here because Texas sits at plus 600 with this schedule. And it's really interesting because you start the year at Ohio State. And now, granted, if you do find a way to beat the Buckeyes on the road, you feel confident about what this team can do the rest of the year. You'll get 3 wins right after that. You get a bye week before you go to Florida and face Oklahoma in Dallas. You go at Kentucky, at Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt. So a 3-game stretch that you should find wins. And again, if you're playing with a ton of confidence, you should be able to be undefeated before you go to Athens and face Georgia. Now, if you get revenge in that game, you feel pretty good. Then you get Arkansas at home and Texas A&M. Again, not a tough or not an easy route by any means, but if there's a team that's equipped to potentially go undefeated, Texas is definitely one of those teams. The final one I'll discuss is James Madison. They're at plus 2,900 to go undefeated, so it's pretty unlikely. But however, if they're able to get out of the first month undefeated, you feel pretty confident about what they could do. Now, there are some concerns at the quarterback position. That is a position in question right now, but we won't dive into that. You start with Weber State before you go to Louisville. And if you're able to beat the Cardinals on the road, I feel confident about their ability to beat Liberty 2 weeks later. We talked about Liberty potentially going undefeated. That is a tough road test for this team. And again, if the quarterback position isn't sorted out by then, it might take them some time to get up to speed. But if you're able to get out of September undefeated, oh, by the way, you also face Georgia Southern, who is a team that should be competing for a Sun Belt championship. You should feel pretty confident about what you can do. The last half of the schedule does provide some challenges. You have to face Louisiana, you have to face Texas State, App State, and you also have to face Washington State. But 3 of those games are at home, so that makes life a little bit easier. That's a fun atmosphere for the Dukes. And again, this is going to be fun to see how they play. When you look at teams going undefeated, it is not very likely, but because nobody's lost yet, it's fun to have this exercise. So if you like the video, make sure you comment below who you think is going undefeated this year. Subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one.